September 11th, 2001, I think was the most recent one. I'd be willing to bet that everybody in the room can remember exactly what they were doing when they heard of that tragedy. Same thing goes on November 22nd, 1963, when President Kennedy was killed. And of course, probably the one that started it all was 1941, this day, 75 years ago. We have several World War II veterans in our midst tonight, and that day thrust us into a war that many Americans did not want. But I think it was a war that changed our world as we know it today. And many brave young people lost their lives, over 2,400 of them in Pearl Harbor alone, almost half of them on the USS Arizona. Today, we have amongst us a person that I'm honored to introduce, Radar Third Class, Art Lieberman, served in World War II. He was a student at Sibley High School when that message that you just heard was read by the president. He was drafted, did so well on the test that they gave him that he opted to join the Navy rather than go into the Army. And he served on the USS Indianapolis. That ship was the flight ship for U.S. Admiral that conducted several of the battles in the Pacific and turned the course of the war in our favor. Mr. Lieberman has been awarded the Purple Heart, and he has the Asian Pacific Medal with 8 battle stars, which basically means that they fought in 8 major battles in the Pacific. Unfortunately, the USS Indianapolis was sunk. Mr. Lieberman was one of the few that got off the ship, and that was one of the most tragic naval at-sea tragedy that the U.S. has ever had to this day. Today, Art is one of 23 survivors of the 1,169 people that were serving aboard the Indianapolis when it went down. It gives me great honor to present to you Mr. Art Lieberman.
I hope you can all hear me. Like the newspaper and things like that say that I came from Sibley, Illinois. Well, it's a little town up the road here north of Gibson City. And the sign says 400 people, and it's been that sign there for the last, 80, 90 years that I can remember. But anyway, I was in high school when a senior when the war broke out, and that summer in 1942, I got out of high school. I was 17 and I turned 18 July the 5th, and of course I received my draft notice right away, and I decided, well, I'd try to work for a while till I was called, so I worked until the spring of '43 up at Joliet at the Joliet Ordnance Plant. And we rode back and forth in the car, and we paid 50 cents a day to ride in the car. But anyway, I was drafted and went to Great Lakes boot camp, got out of boot camp and was shipped to California to a shoemaker, and then they transferred about 300 out to the Indianapolis. Well, it was anchored anchored in the bay at San Francisco, and they took us out there in motor whaleboats. Kind of a little different situation for some kid in the Midwest that had hardly ever been out of Illinois. But anyway, shortly after that, we left and went to Pearl Harbor, and I was sent up to radar school on Army radar, and I was there a couple of weeks, and the ship came back in and picked me up. And anyway, in November of '43 then, we went on our first island operation, and of course we had Admiral Spruance aboard, and he was responsible for all those landings on the island in the Pacific. One time we went by the island of Guam when the U.S. was taking that island, and we had some submarine reports that there was some Japanese carriers coming in from the Philippines, and Admiral Spruance kept the task force on the west side of Guam, and one Sunday morning they sent their airplanes in, and of course our carriers sent our airplanes after them, and at the end of the day the carrier group has shot down 402 Japanese airplanes. And basically, from what we understand, they're good pilots, and it helped change the wartime in the Pacific. And we liberated Guam and Saipan and Tinian, and we did some artillery firing at Iwo Jima, and then we went on a carrier raid on Japan, and came back a couple times for that. And then on April the 1st, in 1945, they were doing the landings at Okinawa, and we got hit with a kamikaze the day before the landing, and we lost about 20 men, and the ship got damaged, had two of the propellers knocked out on the evaporator system, and we limped back to the United States and got repaired. And then in July, instead of going on to what we were supposed to be on a shakedown cruise, we went down to San Francisco to what they call the piers were at Hunters Point, which is right downtown in San Francisco. And about the next day, there was a truck came down there. Excuse me, I'm getting warm. Okay. Anyway, a truck came down there with a box on it, and it sat there for a little bit, and we found out later on, after we had left there, that the captain didn't want to take it because he wouldn't tell him what it was. And there was two officers and a couple of sailors came aboard, and the two sailors were carrying a box that was about 2 foot square and about 2 foot high that was carrying the fuses, which we found out later. But anyway, they finally told the captain he had to take the box, and they put it aboard, and we pulled out, and they didn't tell the captain what we had until we was out to sea. Anyway, we went at about flank speed from San Francisco to Pearl Harbor, took on fuel and left there, and it took us 9 days to go from San Francisco to Tinian, where where, of course, we dropped off this bomb, which was the first bomb that General Tibbets dropped. And we still didn't, as the sailors, didn't know what it was. Anyway, we left there and left Tinian and went back to Guam. And we were there about a day, and the captain wanted an escort from Guam to the Philippines. And the guys there at Guam said, well, you don't need an escort. So we left there, and we were about halfway to the Philippines in the middle of the night, right at 12 o'clock. We got hit by a couple of torpedoes. I was on duty until 12 o'clock. I should have been relieved at a quarter till. But anyway, I was back in the John going towards my bunk when the ship got hit. And the first torpedo took off the bow of the ship, and the second one hit the first magazine. And we had a flash fire in the officers' quarters part of the ship, because we carried a couple of float planes at one time, and we had aviation gas aboard. Anyway, we had a crew of mess cooks, colored, that was for the officers, and they were billeted up in the bow. And when the bow went off, all those mess cooks didn't survive. There wasn't one of them survived the sinking at all. And after we got hit, I went back to the fantail and got a life jacket and went to my general quarters station. And I told my buddy, well, this thing's going to sink. We better get off here. Well, the ship was already listing about a third of the way at that time. And we both scooted down the port side of the ship and jumped off of what you call the bilge keel, which is at the bottom of the ship where it kind of turns. And I never saw my friend after that. We jumped in a lot of oil, and we threw up and made us sick. And of course, we all got covered with oil. If you were 2 feet from a friend or so, you couldn't tell who they were. Anyway, we thought we'd get rescued the next day, and it didn't happen. And like a lot of articles say, there was some sharks around. Well, that's amazing. We was out in the middle of the ocean, and them sharks showed up the first day already. And there wasn't hardly any life rafts came off of the ship. I think maybe possibly 4 or 5. And there was a couple of bales of what they call floater nets came off. And a lot of us were around those floater nets. And I suppose we had maybe 100 guys around one here and there. But there was so many swells out there that you didn't know how many men was around at all. The ship was still underway when it got hit, and it kept moving. And after they finally came out there to rescue us and located us, I think we were scattered over about 100 miles. And anyway, every day there was a few guys disappeared, and the sharks didn't bother you if you kind of stayed in a bunch. If you swam away from the bunch, you usually didn't never see that guy again. Anyway, we were out there for 4.5 days and 5 nights, and in that time, about the second or third day, I don't remember too much going on at all. If they hadn't located us when they did, I don't think there would have been hardly anybody alive. This Wilbur Gwynn was piloting a Ventura airplane on submarine search, and he happened to see an oil slick, and he came down and saw all the heads in the water. You know that in the ocean you can't hardly see anything unless you're almost on top of it. But anyway, we figured we was going to get rescued after he saw us, and he radioed for survivor equipment. They flew out some of these inflatable rafts, and I tried to get into one of them and I couldn't get in it. I had to take off my life jacket that was all waterlogged, because life jackets in those days would only last about 2 days. They would get waterlogged. In fact, we found out later that some of them were filled with what you call milkweed pods for flotation. But anyway, some ships came to rescue us about 2 o'clock the next morning, and I didn't even remember when they picked me up. They took me to a destroyer and had to have help getting aboard. And I guess while we were aboard, they cleaned all the oil and everything off of us, and took us to the island of Palau, which our forces had taken before, to a hospital. A hospital ship came in and picked us up and took us to Guam, and we were at Guam for several weeks until we basically recovered, I mean. Anyway, there was 1,196 of them aboard ship, and they picked up 317 of us. And today there's 23 of us alive yet. But anyway, after I got out of the hospital at Guam, they took us up to a submarine rest camp. And I was up there that first day, and you were allowed to go through the chow line, and they would serve you the meat, and you could take anything else you wanted. Well, I noticed some guys didn't take anything. Well, they went and sat down at the table, and pretty soon here come a full pie and a full gallon of ice cream, and that's what they ate. But anyway, while I was on the island of Guam, a friend that I was in high school with up at Sibley, he was a year ahead of me in school, came over to see me. And I was surprised. And he was also in the Navy, but he was in a crew of men that got flight pay and everything, but they were towing sleeves for the ships for target practice. And later, of course, the war was over. They dropped that first bomb on the 6th of August, and then they dropped the second one on the 9th. And we got a 30-day leave later on. And when we were coming home on that small carrier, Hollandia, there was Raymond Inghausen, my friend from school, on the same ship coming home. And I didn't get discharged because I didn't have enough points. So they sent me back up to Navy Pier in Chicago, and then I was sent back to California. Well, I complained a little bit, and I got shore patrol duty in the fall of 45 until March of 46 when I got discharged. And that's about the size of the trip I had in my 3 years in the Navy. If anybody wants to ask a question, I'll see if I can answer it.
questions?
At this time, our Ladies Auxiliary would like to present Art with a little memento tonight. Art?
Hi, Art. I must say, you've got some real grit here, buddy. You're a real survivor. I have one question. Were you taught survival training at all? So this was just,
Up at Great Lakes, you give you a little training, gets you out over a swimming pool and have you jump into it. And you can swim to the side.
no oil.
No, nothing.
I kind of wonder if the oil might have protected you a little bit from the,
Well, it did some, but we still got sunburn.
yeah.
I had what they call salt water burns on my joints and my legs and arms.
Well, we're really, really proud to have you in the community. And we have a little token on behalf of the auxiliary here at the American Legion Post. It's a star that was once on a flag, and it's been cut out of that flag, and it says, "I am part of our American flag that has flown over the USA. I can no longer fly. The wind and the rain caused me to become tattered and torn. Please carry this as a reminder that you are not forgotten."
At this time, we would like to place a wreath for the 2,400 people who were lost at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 75 years ago, and also to all the men and women who fought for us in World War II. Many gave up their lives. Presenting the wreath today is Mr. Jim Hitchens and his wife Charlotte. Jim was a high school student also on December 7th at Dewey, Illinois. He was drafted. And I've got to get my notes now. Jim served in the 43rd Infantry Division. He served in the liberation of the Philippines. I'm sure most of you can remember when MacArthur left, he said, "We will be back." Jim was one of those guys that came back and liberated them. Fortunately for him, the atomic bomb was dropped on Japan. And he was one of the first units that would have gone to Japan before the war ended. Fortunately, he did go to Japan, but the war was over. Nobody was shooting at him. Jim is the proud holder of 2 Bronze Stars. So at this time, I present Jim and Charlotte. Mr. Sergeant at Arms, would you assemble the 1015 Honor Guard to present military honors?
Let's go stand back there.
those of you who are not aware, our honor guard will file out on the back porch, and they will fire 3 volleys in honor of all military that have fallen. Mr. Don Millar will play taps at that end. So as they get ready to do that, if everyone would please rise. And at the start of taps, if all